Thank you. It is always a treat to have you with us, Howard. So glad that you're with us this morning, and thank you, as always, Gregory. Perfectionism is a demon I have long done battle with. I've spent much of my life feeling not good enough, trying to find a way to convince others, and moreover myself, that I am worthy of love by avoiding mistakes and not taking risks. Perfectionism is a trap that does damage to the psyche, interferes with genuine relationships of trust, and makes the love and acceptance the perfectionist longs for above all else elusive. Brené Brown, writer and vulnerability researcher, describes perfectionism as a, quote, 20-ton shield that we lug around thinking it will protect us when in fact it's the thing that's really preventing us from being seen, end quote. It's a false armor that fools us into thinking that we're impervious to pain, when in actuality it makes us far more vulnerable to being harmed and to harming others. But it's awfully hard to put the armor and the weapon of perfectionism down when there is a constant flicker of images telling us how we're supposed to look, act, think, to make life and to make us perfect. How can we fortify ourselves to live bravely into our full and imperfect selves? Like all intentional living, it is practice. For the past several years, I've been wanting to incorporate art into a regular spiritual practice. I've largely set down artistic pursuits since I left my very short-lived profession as an art teacher decades ago. Oh, I've painted with my young children, made Halloween costumes, and have enjoyed many years of Night of the Arts and Ornament Sunday projects here. But it's been too long since I've given myself real time and space to explore my creativity and how that would feed my spirit. So I signed up for an open studio art class through the Skokie Park District. It started a few weeks ago, and I was very surprised at how nervous I felt as I approached the door of the classroom, arriving an hour and a half late and unsure of what to expect or what would be expected of me. What I found were 6 older women working quietly on their various paintings and one woman puttering in the corner making coffee. When I figured out that the one making coffee was the teacher, I sheepishly introduced myself, and she slowly got my station set up. It took her about 15 minutes to set up the board and the paper clipped to the board and the charcoal and the bench and the eraser. She spent a good few minutes explaining how erasers work. She then drew for me very methodically 5 shapes: a square, a rectangle, a circle, a semicircle, an oval, each with a line extending out from each shape across the page. She told me to draw 9 of each of the shapes across the paper in charcoal. Okay, I thought, I got this. I minored in art in college, but it's been a while, and this was just the kind of structure that I was hoping for. I didn't want to walk into an open studio and have to self-start my creative juices or have to manufacture some kind of inspiration out of thin air. This was just what I needed. I repeated to myself, teachable mind, cultivate a teachable mind. I sat at the bench and I drew just as methodically as my instructor had the 5 shapes, getting lost in the lines, erasing and redrawing any lines that weren't just right. As I drew, repeating to myself, teachable mind, I could hear a few of the other women in the class over my shoulder commenting, "She's really good. Her shapes are perfect." I tried to block this out. Perfection was not what I was going for. Or was it? I mean, really, can I ever set down perfectionism? Once I had all my shapes down, she had me shade them in from light to dark, and then I was allowed to move on to a still life with plastic fruit and an empty wine bottle. I remembered the practice of drawing is actually the practice of looking and erasing. Lines and shapes are etched out bit by bit with the contrast of light and shadow by looking and measuring and adding and subtracting, putting down charcoal here, rubbing it a little bit there with my fingers and other tools, and strategically erasing. It is the practice of dismantling perfectionism with the lowest possible stakes. Dismantling perfectionism as it manifests in oppressive power carries the highest possible stakes. As our reading points out, perfectionism is about the illusion of control. To reiterate Brewer's words, control is power. What you are most seeking is power within, but in time, practicing control over and over often gets warped into a quest for control and power as an output. The longing for power within, when practiced unconsciously and from woundedness, becomes a need for power over. As a congregation, we are practicing an awareness of and a commitment to anti-oppression. We are working on understanding the ways systems of oppression work together and interlock to shut people out and maintain power over. We are cultivating a commitment to dismantling systems of white supremacy as they exist within society at large, within our movement, our congregation, and within ourselves. This is long, hard work, and each of us is in a different place. But I have witnessed here a rising understanding and commitment to doing this hard work. In our practice and our learning, we can turn to the insight and wisdom which people of color and partners in justice have shared. Let us express gratitude for wisdom shared even when it is hard to hear, even when it disturbs our internalized perfectionism, fragility, and entitlement, for wisdom and hard truths shared. Will you say together to those who have shared it, thank you? I have come to understand that my own perfectionism is a tool of white supremacy, and that is hard to take in. Tema Okun and Kenneth Jones have articulated characteristics of white supremacy culture, which are deeply embedded in every aspect of American society. These are characteristics hard to name and identify because they are normalized and idealized. However, they are deeply damaging to people of color and white people. Perfectionism is the first characteristic on this list, unsurprisingly, because it manifests in hypercriticism based on unrealistic and narrowly shared expectations. Mistakes are seen as a reflection of someone's humanity and worth or lack thereof. To dismantle white supremacy culture, we must dismantle perfectionism. A way to do that, according to Okun and Jones, is cultivating a culture of appreciation where mistakes are seen as opportunities for learning, separate from the person who makes them. We can practice this way of cultivating a teachable mind and dismantling the rigid armor of perfectionism in this time of transition. We have an opportunity now to begin again with new members and several new staff members, and an interim minister skilled in asking curious questions and holding the space for us to consider them. We have an opportunity to set aside hyper-critique and unrealistic expectations. We have a chance to create a culture of appreciation for one another, of an openness to blessed mistakes that offer teachable moments. A chance to look honestly at how our systems, the ways we've always done it, can unintentionally cause harm. One of my favorite television shows is The Good Place. If you're not familiar with the show, spoiler alert, it's basically a crash course in philosophy wrapped around caricatures of some of our most human shortcomings. The four main characters die and end up in the bad place, but they are told that it's the good place, which is all an elaborate ruse to make torturing them more interesting for a particular demon. Early on, we learn that people get to the good place by accumulating points in life. Do something good, kind, generous, altruistic, or something that lessens your carbon footprint, and you earn good place points. Do something bad or annoying or harmful to someone else or the planet, and points are subtracted. If you have enough good points when you die, then you go to the good place. If you've got negative points, bad place. Simplistic and not at all how I imagine most Unitarian Universalists would view the afterlife, but it makes for a funny and refreshingly thought-provoking sitcom. In season 3, the characters come to realize that for more than 500 years, it's been impossible to get into the good place because life has just become too complex. Every action we take, even if we are trying to do good, has negative consequences that we can't foresee or control. We can't help but cause harm, do some damage with the footprint of our lives. It's a debilitating conclusion for perfectionists. But as the main protagonist, Eleanor Shellstrop, says, when faced with the improbability of actually doing any cumulative good in the world, we have to try. My friends, we simply have to try. This Friday, millions of people of all ages, led by our youngest global citizens, participated in the climate strike. How many of you participated in a climate strike somewhere? Okay. I showed up in Evanston's Independence Park at 10:30 on Friday morning, hoping to be among a throng of people. It was definitely less than a throng. But we were there, 30 or 50 or 40 of us, somewhere around there, strangers mostly. We marched a few blocks to Haven Middle School. We chanted, "What do we want? Climate action. When do we want it? Now!" We waved to the cheering students from their classroom windows, disappointed that their teachers didn't let them outside. Then we walked back, sang a few songs, and slowly dispersed. I was glad to be a part of it, even though it felt a little underwhelming, like a tiny pebble thrown in the ocean. I was glad I went because I need to keep trying. An antidote to the despair of perfectionism is to keep doing what we can, adding our voices to the collective goodwill. The practice of dismantling white supremacy culture asks us to make our small contributions in whatever ways we can. Looking, erasing, reshaping, remaining open with a teachable mind, saying thank you. Saying thank you for learning opportunities. Our small actions might be donating to organizations like Asada's Daughters or 350.org or the UUSC. Our small action may be a protest or a vigil, writing letters, divesting from fossil fuels, composting food scraps, voting. These are small actions that individually may seem insignificant, but collectively build movements and wear down the structures of oppressive power. It will take all of us doing what we can, however small, again and again, to save our planet and redeem our humanity. Perfectionism tells us if it's not perfect, don't even try. If there's no guarantee or even likelihood that we'll fix all that is wrong, why even bother? Perfectionism tells us it's not worth it to look foolish or incompetent or less than perfect. I'm here to tell you that perfectionism is a charlatan comprised of fear. Together, we can remove its armor to see that it matters that we try. You matter. We matter. This matters. I invite each of you to embrace a mistake today, or even 3 this week. Practice embracing your mistakes like an old friend come to teach you that you'll survive, that with all of life's imperfections, love endures, and the world is worth the effort it will take to save it. I close with this prayer for the perfectionist in all of us by Reverend Elizabeth Nguyen, a queer Vietnamese American affiliated as a community minister with First Parish in Cambridge, UU, and a founding member of the Lucy Stone Cooperative. Spirit, I would really rather not learn this. Didn't think I needed to. I thought someone else could do it, thought a leader was coming to do it, thought the young people could do it, or the elders could do it, or the professionals. Or I don't want to learn it because it means letting go of something I hold dear, letting go of being someone who knows the answers, letting go of being someone who doesn't know, letting go of the way I see the world, letting go of how I might have to change, letting go of certainty, of logic, of facts, of control, of the myth that you can live on this earth and not do harm, or the myth that I can't learn anything new. Help me to learn it, please. And then help me to live what I have learned and do right by the gift of being taught. Thank you, Reverend Nguyen. Let us continue to practice the practice of dismantling perfectionism, of embracing a teachable mind and spirit, of opening ourselves to the creating, sustaining, and transforming power of love. May it be so. May we make it so.